The Pittsburgh Steelers seemingly started their offseason with a bang. Just a day before the start of free agency 4 days ago, the news broke that they were trading a second-round pick to the Seattle Seahawks to acquire wide receiver DK Metcalf, most famous for being the son of Bears Super Bowl tackle Terrence Metcalf, by the way. And if I were a Steelers fan, honestly, that would have made me really fun. That would have made for a really fun evening. I won't even lie to you. One of those tweets or notifications that would hit my phone and just that instant adrenaline and dopamine rush, like the feeling when the Bears signed Julius Peppers and I walked up to the TV to see that, or waking up that last day of summer vacation back in 2018 to see a notification on my phone that the Bears had just gotten Khalil Mack, and that feeling is just such a ridiculous pick-me-up, regardless of your mood beforehand, to see that notification that your team just made one of those big-time acquisitions. But then the Steelers' decision to just kind of sit on their hands afterwards, especially with what they were going to do at quarterback, is what really baffles me about the DK Metcalf move. So we're going to talk about that here real quick. About a week ago, Vegas odds makers had Justin Fields as the most likely Steelers starting quarterback heading into 2025, but then the line suddenly shifted a few days afterwards to the New York Jets becoming the betting odds favorite to land the former Chicago first-round pick. The Steelers let the Jets get the first meeting with Fields, went over there, met with the Jets. Steelers couldn't even talk contract with him before the Jets had swooped him up, and he immediately signed with New York. If I were a Pittsburgh fan, this is where I would have some concerns before we even get into the other options at quarterback or the possibilities for the team, because the contract was certainly a healthy one. I mean, whatever. He's a young quarterback. He was going to get paid the big boy dollars in free agency. But having his choice seemingly between Pittsburgh and what they have now with DK Metcalf, George Pickens, that great defense, a Hall of Fame coach, and choosing to go to the New York Jets, who are, of course, the New York Jets, unless he just really missed playing with his old college teammate Garrett Wilson, that would certainly have me asking some but why questions. And I'm not really sure that any of the answers would leave me with the warm fuzzies if I were a Pittsburgh fan. Lots of rumors, of course, that it had to do with not being given any assurances about a starting role in Pittsburgh, and maybe even some harsh feelings still in the air about his benching last season in favor of Russell Wilson. But if that's true, and Pittsburgh wouldn't commit to him as the starter next season if they signed him, surely that means that they have another plan to bring in a quarterback, right? Because to not be willing to give Fields the green light that he could have the job surely implies that it's because you also plan to bring in another signal caller to potentially compete for that job. No? Yes? I mean, that's just kind of how I think about it, but obviously, as soon as Fields left, the eyes then immediately turned to the two looming veterans who, 4 years ago, if you said your team had to choose between Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers to be your next starting quarterback, I would have to think most NFL fans would overjoy themselves into a coma and then immediately back out of it again. But now it feels a bit like when you're scanning through your fridge for something to eat, and you see some leftovers in the Tupperware containers kind of sitting in the back, and you got some 2-week-old pot roast and some spaghetti you made about a week and a half ago, and both of those were really good dinners when you had them fresh out of the pot that night. But now it's 2 weeks later and you don't really know, and you keep looking, and you're just kind of praying that anything more appetizing will just kind of materialize out of thin air and suddenly appear in your fridge. But the leftovers just keep staring back at you, and also the leftovers spend the entire offseason in an underground cabin smoking crack, or the other one smiles at you with this soulless smile that makes you genuinely concerned that it isn't a real human being, but maybe one of those plastic toy Santas from the Santa Claus 2. It can sometimes throw a beautiful deep ball, admittedly, but I fear this metaphor has gotten away from me just a little bit. Point is, not nearly as good of options as they once were. But if it is to be, then it is to be, I guess. But now that we have received news that Russell Wilson has meetings scheduled with the Browns and Giants this week before he meets with Pittsburgh, Aaron Rodgers is meeting with the Giants, It's starting to feel like, is there a threat that this is going to be the Justin Fields situation part 2? Obviously both of those teams going to get first dibs at these quarterbacks, so is it finally time? Is that maybe the best case scenario for Pittsburgh? Is it finally going to be a situation where their hands are forced and they finally have to go into a full rebuild here, take a year, have a tank, go out and draft your guy next year? But then this morning, just now getting the update that they've just re-signed Mason Rudolph. And now I'm entirely thrown through a loop because, for some teams, Rudolph might be that perfect tank quarterback, gets you respectfully through a tough season, you draft his replacement next year. But he's got familiarity with the Steelers and the offense. And you, for some reason, just loaded that offense up with another star wide receiver, despite not having a quarterback nailed down. And honestly, Mason Rudolph on that roster with that team and that offense that he's familiar with, veteran quarterback, he's not top of the line guy, but you're probably still looking at 8 to 10 wins just knowing how Mike Tomlin operates. And then has anything really changed at all for Pittsburgh? You're just looking at more of the same. For me personally, I think it's probably time you start talking about playing the aggressive game on draft night and you go for broke. You play the screw them picks game and you trade up. If not this year, then maybe next year. But it's something they haven't really been too aggressive in doing as an organization. But it should be becoming clearer and clearer by the year that the ideal, perfect quarterback fit for your team long term is not just going to fall into your lap by a happy accident. And if your team and your coach are too good, which I think right now they probably are, to be able to draft one in the top 5 to 10 organically, I think it's probably time you start looking at the 2017 Chiefs approach here and you trade up and you go grab one. This year, the possibility for a trade-up, I think, is really strong. You go up into the top 10. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of teams looking to move back in this draft class with it being so middle-heavy and not really considered to be top-heavy at all. There's not a lot of top-level talent in the top 10 like there normally is. There's not a great number of blue chippers. A lot of experts saying that the guy you get at 5 could be very, very similar to the guy you get at 40. It's a deep class. There's a lot of middle type players. Not a lot of blue chippers. Not a lot of guys in the top 10. Probably better this draft to have more picks than it is to have a high pick. Unless you're targeting a very specific player. And if the Steelers decide that they just love one of these quarterbacks in, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, and I honestly have doubts about Cam Ward slipping at this point. I think there's so much noise around Cam Ward right now, possibly going to either Tennessee or Cleveland, that probably the least likely of the options. But, there's even talk about Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. I don't really personally love any of the quarterbacks in this draft. I think it's a fairly weak draft class. But if one of them starts to slide for whatever reason and the Steelers do see one of these guys is the guy and they see an opportunity to go up with, say New England or Jacksonville, or really just a whole bunch of teams there from picks 4 through 10 would probably be willing to at least negotiate to go back and acquire more picks as opposed to picking up there, especially teams that don't need a quarterback and are just looking to pick up players. That might be something Pittsburgh is willing to do, or you can wait a year, play it out with Mason Rudolph, get your 9-8 season out of the way. Maybe they get the 7 seed again. Who knows? It's Pittsburgh. That just seems to be kind of something that no matter how bad you think they might be on paper, they're going to hang around. They're going to be in that wild card discussion regardless. But maybe you go do it next year. Maybe if you fall in love with a QB, obviously the thing is you don't know how easy it's going to be to trade up next year as opposed to this year. But it should be a stronger quarterback class, if only marginally. But let me know what you guys think. Any Steelers fans out there? What would you prefer? Let me know. Are you all on board to just attempt the tank under Mason Rudolph? Would you give up draft picks to go up the board, go get a rookie? Are you hoping to get one next year? Are you hoping to land Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers? Are you slightly more optimistic about the old men that yell at clouds this year than I am? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what other topics you'd like covered. And I'll see you guys next time. Some more formats coming at you here soon. We're thinking about starting up a Legends of the Game series where we break down some of the lore and history of the NFL. Let me know some players, coaches, legendary teams from the game's past, maybe some moments, some years, rule changes, all kinds of stuff. Willing to make video essays about any of it, break down some questions some of you guys might have. Maybe some of you guys are interested in the deep past of the NFL. Also looking at the Tuesday top 10 starting this Tuesday. Probably going to start off with something quarterback related. But any ideas you guys have, any requests you guys have, let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next time.